If you don't know me, I'm Nina. I am the content creator on the marketing team at AFS-USA. Thanks so much for joining us. As Julie mentioned, this is recorded, just so you know. So if you don't want to be on camera, you can turn your video off. So tonight's marketing webinar is on the topic of hosting recruitment and organizing local events. Now that summer's coming up and there's more opportunities to have local events to organize and to table, we wanted to talk about hosting recruitment in the context of those. And Julie also said if you want to add where you're from, you can drop that in the chat. So we'll get started. And if anyone has any questions during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat, or we'll have time at the end to answer questions, or we can have some discussion as well. So this is our agenda for tonight. We're going to be covering our best practices and resources for hosting an AFS event. We are going to cover some print and digital resources that you can use for promotions, reaching out to the press about your AFS event, which we actually covered a bit in our previous webinar as well. So if you want to know more about the specifics of working with the press, feel free to check out that recording on Help and Learning. That's where this recording will be housed as well. And we're also going to cover some resources and strategies to recruit diverse host families, how to encourage current host families to recruit or host again, which especially right now, as we're in the height of our hosting recruitment, it's always great to know some strategies for how to engage current host families. And then what's working for area teams and volunteers right now, some strategies they use for local events, and how they've found success in recruiting volunteers as well as host families. Okay. So why is it important to organize local AFS events or table at existing ones? Events are a great way to really humanize the AFS experience. Connecting with people on a personal level is a lot of time more successful than connecting digitally. As great as our digital promotions are, it's always great to have that face-to-face interaction. Local events also give you a wide variety of opportunities and populations to recruit from. So when it comes to recruiting diverse host families, going to different events, whether it's organizing or tabling at an existing event, it's a great way to diversify the people that you are working with. And another thing that's really great about working local events is that you can really speak your story in person. I think sharing your story is one of the best ways that we can bring more people into the AFS family. And so taking that time to share your story in person is a really great tool to use when recruiting host families. Another thing that's great about local events is that you can include other members of the AFS community. So including exchange students, current host families, other volunteers, even alumni and returnees. These are all members of our AFS family that are great assets to recruiting and just sharing stories around AFS. So the more variety of AFSers that you can get at your events and organizing events, the more success you'll have in connecting with a wide range of people. Okay, so we're going to start with a poll. What kinds of AFS events do you facilitate in your community? And this is a multiple choice, so feel free to select more than one. We have get-togethers for students and families or volunteers, orientations, AFS-USA local info sessions, holiday celebrations, tabling opportunities like farmers markets, or I haven't facilitated any type of events, which is totally fine. That's why we're all here. Okay. Looks like right now get-togethers is in the lead, followed by orientations. I think we have a few more people that can answer. Okay, is that the final answer, Julie? I saw a thumbs up. Okay, so we have 100% answered. So yeah, get-togethers for students, families, and volunteers is the top one, tied with orientations. We also have some folks that do tabling opportunities, which is great. We love to see that, especially at diverse locations, which we'll talk about a little later. Holiday celebrations are also really amazing, great way to connect with people, especially around exciting times of the year. And then we have local info sessions and other trailing behind. I do see that nobody answered. I haven't done any, so that's great. Everybody here has a little bit of event organizing experience or tabling experience. So we'll move on from that poll and we can kind of discuss these results a little bit later as we have questions and discussion. Okay, so here are some best practices that we wanted to kind of discuss when it comes to organizing AFS events. A lot of this information is actually accessible in Help and Learning as well, which I'll show you a little bit later. So I think that, utilizing Help and Learning as much as you can is always a plus. We always have updated resources there, which I'll show you. But we'll start with a topic that I think is one of the biggest components of organizing an event, which is the when and the where. So a really big idea here is that time and place has an impact on who can attend. So being inclusive means that you're considering the different components of when and where an event takes place. So accessibility is important. The time of day is incredibly vital because there are potential hosts that might work full time. They might be single parents. They might have children. So bringing their children with might be a factor of whether or not they can attend. So that's something to consider. Location is another one. So central locations within a town or a city, especially ones that are accessible by public transport, will make your event more inclusive as opposed to somewhere that might be far to drive, which means anyone that doesn't have a car might not be able to make it. Some other components are food, which everyone knows can really help create a successful event, especially when it's traditional foods cooked by exchange students. We know many of our exchange students love cooking, so that's always a plus. Technology is important to consider, so accessibility in that respect, and thinking outside the box. So there are a lot of different places, and we'll cover this probably a couple times tonight, that you might not consider would be great places to promote AFS, but parades, festivals, community events, there are so many different places that you can promote AFS. And I think that the more different ways that you can promote, the more diverse host families you can recruit and the more people you'll reach overall. Right. Okay, so another component here is including all kinds of AFSers, which I mentioned earlier, including exchange students, current host families, and local alumni. This is a great way to really enhance the storytelling component of your local event. So sharing experiences, as I mentioned, is a really great way to connect people. And meeting exchange students who are really living that AFS experience at that moment is a really humanizing way for host families to see the impact that AFS can have on a community. So including exchange students is a very great component to an event, especially if they're distributing materials or answering questions. They can facilitate an activity or a game, and they can even share their favorite foods from home. Another component of organizing your events is being prepared. So you want to make sure that you plan ahead when it comes to arriving early, setting up, having the materials you need, and knowing what volunteers have which tasks. A lot of times you can get to an event and you can be like trying to delegate and it can get really messy really fast. So it's nice to have a little bit of a plan as to who is responsible for what so that you have all of your bases covered. And as I wrote here, it's always better to be over prepared. So if you have a list of general questions you think people might ask, that's always a plus as well, because it means that instead of just directing someone to a website or saying, fill out this form and someone will get back to you, you can give them that information in real time, which just helps people feel more comfortable with the idea of coming into the AFS community and considering hosting a family or hosting an exchange student. So another thing that you'll want to consider for your event is utilizing talking points, providing volunteers that are running the event with these common points and FAQs is, again, as I mentioned, just a really great way to make sure that people who are attending or people who are coming up and just having conversations with you feel like you know what you're talking about. Even if you're a new volunteer and maybe you don't have an answer to a question, that's okay. You can tell someone, yeah, I'm new to AFS, I'm still learning, but here's this person. They can give you a really great perspective on your question that you have. So make sure you're utilizing, volunteer support and including everybody that you can. Okay. A really big component, as we know, when it comes to AFS events is engaging with visitors. So finding a way to draw people in, especially at large events when there are other tables like career fairs or big festivals, it's great to have some sort of component that people can interact with as opposed to just reading a flyer or looking at a slideshow. So having a brief game or an activity, I've seen some tabling events where people will have like a spin the wheel to win a prize. Having trivia questions is always a great component. Really any sort of interactive thing is really great to include because it just means that people will stay at your table longer or stay at your event longer, and they're just more likely to have a good time. This is also a really great opportunity to bring in brand awareness. So, having AFS items, wearing your AFS shirt, bringing those components that really unify the AFS community can help people see that we are united and that AFS is a really strong community. So you want to make sure that you're including those brand components there. Another thing when it comes to engaging is introducing yourself. Really, that name to name interaction can make a huge difference. Instead of just someone walking by your table and asking a couple questions, ask them their name, give them your name, have that human interaction, and people are more likely to ask you more questions and feel comfortable, especially if they've never even considered hosting, they don't know anything about it. Having that level of comfort with a volunteer can make a huge difference. And as I mentioned a few times, sharing your own story is a great way to draw people in. So authenticity is a big part of being an AFSer. Sharing your own hosting experience or your volunteer experience is extremely effective. And if people seem hesitant to the idea, providing examples of how people have overcome that hesitancy can be really great. So maybe you weren't sure that hosting would be right for you, or maybe it was even a last minute decision for you, and it ended up being a life changer. Those are things that people want to know because those are real world situations. It's the reality of many host families a lot of times. And so, sharing that experience and, making sure people understand it's not always going to be easy or sunshine and rainbows. It's still a great experience that has been unforgettable. Oops, I think my screen froze. Sorry. Nope. There we go. Okay. So another component to an event that can be really beneficial, especially when it comes to retaining people that attend and actually, getting that action out of your interaction, is proposing these action items. So making sure that you're providing an email sign up sheet, which I know most people when they're tabling, they'll have one. Student bios that people can take with them are great because it means that they have something to look at even after they leave, outside of just a flyer. It's nice to have actual exchange student profiles there because it means that they can see the real human component of why people want to come to the US. Another great thing to have that I know a lot of volunteers include is having a QR code to scan. Be sure to test it out and make sure that it works. But a lot of people will prefer that as opposed to a piece of paper. Some people don't like having paper. They'll just throw it away the second they walk out the door. So you want to make sure that that's an option for people who maybe prefer to have info on their phone. Providing contact information is obviously extremely important. Your volunteer email or our hosting email. If you provide hosting at afsusa.org, that'll direct them to hosting staff. So if you don't have a specific designated email for your team, you can always direct people to our hosting staff. And you want to provide that to interested families so that they can get in touch with someone if they have any questions and follow up if they have interest in a specific student. Another thing that you can do, which is helpful, is displaying our social media profiles. So if you don't have our social media profile handles, feel free to reach out to us. We can send them to you. But most of you probably already follow them. Those are great components to add to an event because then people can see the ongoing happenings of AFS, especially if you have your own team profile. It's really great for people in your community to see real exchange students, real host families that are living the AFS experience every day. So providing that information can be a great way to keep people engaged. And then obviously the final component of your event is to follow up. So you want to make sure that you're reaching out to attendees via email or phone within a couple days after the event. and provide next steps. So if they had specific interest, maybe there was a specific country that they were really interested in hosting an exchange student from, remembering those little details can really help you connect in that follow-up, and it will make it more likely that someone will email you back or call you back. So that follow-up is obviously crucial to getting more host families involved. Okay, and these are some resources that you can utilize when you're organizing AFS events. I won't go through all of them. Some of these we've covered in previous webinars, especially our Canva templates, which I know you've probably seen a million times by now. We also have our print materials, which many of you already utilize. So you can follow these links. This presentation will be available obviously afterwards along with the recording. So you can click on these links when you get this as well. I am going to follow a couple of these though really quick just to show you if it'll let me click on it. It might not. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So this is not the right. Actually, okay. There it is. Hosting a successful AFS event. I believe that link might have been incorrect, so I'll fix that to make sure people aren't going to the wrong link. So this article is really helpful. It kind of is an overview of what I just discussed. It provides a little bit more of a timeline of how to put together your event. So if you've never done one before or you just need a little bit more guidance, this is a great way to kind of outline your event. It includes helpful hints as well as links to other articles that can be helpful. So definitely take a look at this. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. But this article is a great starting point for organizing events. And so that's in the presentation here. I'll make sure to switch out that link so it's the right one. And then another thing that I think some people don't know that we have are these promotional graphics. These are just in Google Drive. They're not in Canva or anything, so you don't have to edit them. You can just click that link and you can download these. Many of you have probably seen these in our web ads or on social media, but these are very popular graphics. They tend to draw people in very easily because the pictures are great and they're really engaging. So if you're just doing an invitation or a post for an event and you really need a graphic, but you don't have time to make one, you can always use something like this and then provide the specific event information in a caption or, you know, the body of an email. So these are always great to use if you don't have time to put together something for yourself. And we have 4 different options here. And then we also have these contact ones as well that include our hosting staff contact. So feel free to use these if you would like to. They're great and they're colorful and people tend to be drawn in by them. So those are in the presentation as well, along with some other resources, including like student bio resources, web ads that you can put in newsletters or send off to press, which Julie will talk about in a little bit. So that's pretty much resources that we've covered. I think, yeah, okay. So organizing AFS events in terms of the press, we've already gone through a lot of these articles, especially in our previous webinars, so I'm not going to go through them right now, but these are here just to reference. If you're organizing an event and you need to utilize local press to promote it, or if you already had an event and you want them to cover it or just write an AFS story in general, all of these resources are really great. All these articles have been updated on Help and Learning. So if you were using them and they were a little outdated, we've now updated them. So these are great resources. Another component that I did add was tagging or direct messaging local news publications. So if you're not familiar with using social media or you just don't manage profiles often, direct messaging is just sending an organization a direct message. So in this case, you could send a message to your local news station if they have a social media profile like Facebook or Instagram. Let them know either that an event is happening or that you had an event. And then you can ask if maybe they could promote it. You could ask if there's an email that you could contact in order to organize some sort of promotion. So social media is a great way to connect with news outlets outside of email and phone. And if you have any questions about these resources, feel free to let us know, drop it in the chat, or you can ask at the end as well.
Can I pop in quick, Nina, too, just on that note? I found that one of the hardest things is actually collecting these press contacts or media contacts within your community. So having a shared document where if a volunteer is doing this outreach, they're recording who they talk to, that would be really helpful for future events, because then you know exactly who to go to. Oftentimes, you'll reach out to kind of the generic email address for that publication or the social media profile. You'll direct message them and they'll get back to you with a contact. Hopefully they get back to you. And once you find that contact, that's like gold, because you want to, build that relationship with them, make sure that you're sending them additional information and resources. And we do have, I think we send out, there's like a way to look up, like Google publications in your area. I think there's like newspapers.com, which is helpful, but sometimes it is just the generic email address. So having that information for an actual person stored somewhere that's accessible to all of the volunteers in your team is very helpful. And it's also helpful nationally, because if we have a national event or doing national outreach in your community or in your area, then we have a place to start, basically. So yeah, just wanted to put in that plug.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great addition, which I didn't actually know. So yeah, that's definitely an important thing to consider when you're reaching out. Okay, and we have a second poll here. Where do you recruit diverse host families in your community? And you might not have any answer for this, but the ones that we do have are from your own network, from your community with flyers and tabling events, via social media, or outreach to local organizations. And if you don't have a strategy for this, that's okay. We're all here to learn. We're just curious kind of what different components people have used when it comes to recruitment. Okay, looks like we're pretty even for the most part. I think we might be missing a couple answers, but that's okay. Okay, so it looks like the winner's all the above, which is awesome. Yeah, so these are definitely a wide variety of ways to recruit host families, especially when it comes to recruiting more diverse host families. Obviously, within your own network is great, but sometimes that can only get you so far. So it's nice to include other components when it comes to recruitment, like further out into your community, especially local organizations is an awesome one. So good to see that someone chose that. And we do have someone that clicked none of the above. So that's great, because we have some opportunities here to share some strategies. And I think, yeah, we'll start with recruiting diverse host families when it comes to in-person events or just organizing your events in general. And then we'll switch to kind of the digital side of recruitment. So we covered this a little bit at the beginning, but it's a little different when it comes to whether or not you're considering how you're recruiting diverse host families. So when you're talking about the when and where, as I mentioned earlier, you want to consider families where it might be a two-parent household and they're both working full-time, or you might have a single-parent household that might not be able to attend events a lot of the time, especially virtually or in person. So you want to make sure that you're kind of considering that when you're organizing your events. A lot of times, if events are organized only during the day, especially on a weekday, the attendees are more likely to be people that aren't working during that time, such as retirees or potentially households with a stay-at-home parent. So when you're thinking about your when and where, you just want to make sure you're considering the different abilities that families have in terms of their time. Another thing is tabling or passing out flyers at unique locations. So a lot of people will go to coffee shops or they'll go to career fairs, but there are a lot of different options when it comes to tabling, and most organizations are very willing to allow you to table, especially AFS. We're a great organization. I think we have, really great selling points when it comes to getting new organizations to give us some space to table. So local marathons are great, sporting events, even like music festivals or cultural street festivals are awesome. parades. I know I've seen a couple AFS teams with pictures of their students in parades, but that's always amazing because parades are often widely attended by lots of people in the community. And another one that I've seen that I thought was really cool was international grocery stores. I think that those kinds of stores often attract a wide variety of people and people that are cooking different cuisines. So I think it's great to table there and try to connect with people on that intercultural basis. Another thing that is important to consider is holding events or distributing materials outside of your own area. So explore new communities, explore different neighborhoods. If your volunteer team is small, you can maybe organize a day to go out to a different neighborhood together and spend a day just passing out flyers and maybe tabling at a few places if you can. Another consideration is being mindful of the language that you're using when you're recruiting families. So this is a really important one, and we often consider it in our marketing materials as well. When it comes to trying to recruit non-traditional host families, such as single parents, LGBTQIA plus families or couples, hosts with no kids, younger host couples that might not have kids yet, or maybe they just have a baby. These are families that are probably less likely to look into hosting an exchange student. So we want to make sure that the language we're using is inclusive so that they feel comfortable working with us when it comes to the potential of hosting. So using the term host is often a safer bet than assuming that a family might be a couple or they might be a family with kids. Just in general, it's good to avoid assumptions when it comes to cultural or societal norms. A big cultural norm that people might overlook is that some adult children don't move out of their parents' house. That's very much a cultural thing. And some people don't attend college. So making those assumptions can sometimes make people feel like they might be left out of the hosting conversation. So you just want to be mindful of how you're wording things, whether it's bringing people into the conversation or creating your own marketing materials. And I think we'll be moving on to Julie next. Do you want to add anything to that, Julie, before we move on?
No, I would just, confirm everything you said, reaffirm everything. And our next webinar topic in June will actually focus kind of on inclusivity in our AFS community. So look out for an invitation to that if you want to learn more about this. Awesome. So yeah, I'm going to take it from here for the next few slides, but also in terms of recruiting diverse host families and doing that on like digital platforms, you'll want to consider the platform you're using and the audience. So if you're looking to recruit younger host parents or new parents, they'll most likely be online. That's where you can get your first touch point. Obviously, hosting is a large ask, so it might take multiple touch points to get someone to convert to that host family status. So you might initially, grab someone's attention on Instagram or Facebook, maybe with one of those graphics that Nina was showing. But then it's important for this group too to follow up. So if someone likes the comment or likes the post or comments, they would really appreciate a direct message via that platform, or maybe you ask for their email address so that you can follow up. You should also always consider using hashtags when you're posting on social media and tagging us. A lot of organizations can reshare if you tag their social media accounts as well. And this will just, expand the exposure that post gets and increase your number of likes, which you can follow up on, the comments that you receive. Social media is becoming more than just brand awareness. It's really becoming a platform for people to show interest, and to really start a conversation and learn more. Even if you do direct to the website, people might be looking for more information right on Facebook, right on Instagram. And that's, the younger audience, but you'd be surprised, I think, at the number of, older people also utilizing those platforms for information. And be consistent. So you might find that posting isn't getting you a lot of activity, or in terms of getting people to events, you might not be seeing like immediate kind of benefits to posting to social, but it's all about consistency, growing your followers, getting the word out, and it should increase over time, because every follower that you get has a network that they can repost. Every, like that you get is another potential host family, another attendee to your event. And again, this is the first touch point. So post to social media, that person attends your event, you get to talk to them. That's the second touch point. And then you follow up a couple days later, third touch point, maybe that actually results in a conversion. And it's also really good for brand awareness. We have a very strong brand with AFS. So when, a couple years down the road, someone does decide to host, they might remember that, oh, AFS does that. I'm going to Google them. And then they come to us that way, maybe not from this specific post, but they will remember us because of that, brand awareness that we're creating. Next slide. And yeah, make sure that you're using a variety of different photos when recruiting diverse host families, because when you are looking to purchase a product or you're looking to take part in something, you want to see yourself using it. You want to see yourself, being represented in marketing materials. So we really want to make an effort to showcase, host families of all shapes and sizes. Different photos can be found on Flickr to be used if you don't have anything like locally that would represent like a wider audience. We typically like to use photos from our own, content, our own programs, but stock photos are a possibility on Canva if you need to, represent something that you cannot find a photo for on Flickr or within your own albums. Then, stock photos can be used for this purpose. We definitely want to be representative of our, community. And that's not just, as Nina was saying, a couple with 2 kids that is like the traditional exchange student family. Making sure that you have a second pair of eyes on your content. So make sure that it's grammatically correct, it's compelling. It's definitely like your chance to make a first impression. And that is definitely something to consider when asking someone to just double check that everything looks good. And it also includes others on your team in the process. So if someone's interested in learning about doing more in terms of like digital advertising or digital promotion, then this is a good opportunity to bring them on and kind of teach them what you're doing and onboard them in a sense. And then always include an action item. We definitely want to make sure that hosts know that like what to do. So if like on Instagram, you want to include a link, you can use a link in bio if you have a social media account with your team. We can also provide like special like bit.ly links if you'd like. You just request that from the marketing inbox, marketing@afsusa.org. You can also lead them to like, a form, like a web page. So afsusa.org/host. Pretty easy to put that URL into your like a Google, like Chrome browser or whatever. But yeah, it's always important to include that call to action. Next slide. And we do have resources on help and learning, as Nina was saying. These like articles can be helpful when creating flyers, bios, but you can also order materials. So definitely want to put a plug in. I know a couple of the next slides will showcase some of the materials that we have available. We have standing banners. We have we can create parade banners. So I know Greater Illinois, who we're going to show some examples from next, just created a banner to carry in a Memorial Day parade. So we can definitely create anything that's not available to order if you, send us the design request via our form. And we can also have a conversation. What does your team need? If you're not sure, let us know and we can help. We can be that kind of consultant for you. I know sometimes it's really about finding the time and finding the volunteer who can like carry through the ideas, because there's so many ideas. And I think that sometimes it's just who can implement. We're all so crazy busy and have like these other parts of our lives. How can we divvy up the work so it's a smaller lift for everyone? Next slide. So one good strategy is to ask current host to host again. I'm sure everyone on that call knows that. But it's good to remind ourselves, I think, when and like how to ask current hosts to host again. So be intentional. So we're talking about, ways to recruit host families as it relates to like events, local events. So maybe you're at an event and a current host family is there, and you're talking to them about a new student that's arriving, this coming fall. Those events might be a really good area to bring student bios coming this fall. I'm sure many of you have tried this, but that's a really good time to ask hosts to host again. But you can do so earlier in the year. So it might not be, these last few events that you're hosting for host families, students, volunteers, etc. The more those touch points, the more touch points there are, the more likely someone is to host. So make sure that you're being strategic. Consider leveraging their current experience. So that's the language that you could use around this time. Like if they're having a really great experience with a hosted student, they might be interested in hosting a student from that same country, or maybe learning about a new culture. And email and text templates are available. So if you have any questions on where those are located, we'll provide links. We provide links in this presentation, but you can also check on Help and Learning. Next slide. So I think this is kind of the funnest part of this webinar, just looking at examples of what area teams are doing. So as I mentioned before, this is an example of one of our standing banners. And you can see that all the volunteers are wearing AFS t-shirts. I think they created their own t-shirts, but we also have some to purchase on our site. So this is Miss Tenke. This was a 7th grade career fair, 2-day event, all the 7th graders in the school system. They invited a returnee. There was a couple volunteers. There was a yes student. And this is just a great example of bringing kind of the AFS community together. Having that returnee provides like a very different perspective on the AFS experience. And, it's always good to showcase the many opportunities that AFS provides. It's not just hosting a student. That host family could become a volunteer. They could send their high school, teenager abroad. There's many different ways to be involved with AFS. Next slide. So this is what I was talking about with Greater Illinois, and they did, and maybe I'll go over this article first if Nina, you want to click into it. This is an example of how to advertise for your event. So they have these open houses and info sessions, and they post it on Patch. So Patch is a service similar to Nextdoor that you can check if it's in your community or not. The difference with Patch is more an advertising type service. So you can create full articles that are then linked to display ads, or like this, you can have a type of flyer or image with information on the event or the article below. We're actually doing national Patch advertising but teams are encouraged to do these locally if they have SP funds or area team funds. But it's a really great way to get the word out to people that you might not otherwise reach. You can target by location, and you can do a very similar thing with Nextdoor. So, when you're advertising your event, if you start soon enough, and if you, delegate or divvy up the work, you can definitely, expand your reach and maybe diversify the audience that you are reaching by posting to platforms like this, in addition to like Facebook and Instagram. Then they do this great event. I remember helping with the QR codes for this one. Robin actually sent us this, I think it was this morning, earlier this week, but they mentioned that we decorate a tree for Christmas tree lane in one town. We put QR codes on the ornaments, and it's up for about 6 weeks. We have also made a scarecrow for the Halloween fest in 2 towns. So this, kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. You are engaging current hosts and families, and you're getting the word out. So it's just being up for 6 weeks. That's a really long time to have, an advertisement like this up in a town. So it's just a really good feel-good piece, I think. There was another one that I saw recently. It was a banner that we created for the Columbia Pacific team, I think, that they put on the beach. And it was a big like beach, flag that said AFS-USA with our logo and everything. And they had people coming up to them basically asking, hey, like, what are you all about? What's this flag? Who are all these kids? And so it's just a good way to like get someone's attention. Like seeing this tree might be like, oh, what's your organization? Get the conversation started.
Julie, do you know, are those photos of the exchange students on the tree?
I think so. I think they incorporated some photos, but I think it's a mix of like whatever the students wanted to add. But yeah, I think there are some photos.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's like a great component as well to like show the exchange students in addition to their flags and information about AFS.
You can post student bios. You can't add, photos of students that aren't here yet, but it would be kind of fun for, student bios to also be on the tree. And here are some additional ideas. Robin just does so much, and I think it's like a team effort. So the Greater Illinois team, but she was the one to kind of send us information on these ice cream socials, which I thought was really fun. They basically provide like people that stop at their table a coupon for ice cream at a local ice cream place. And, it's a good way to get people to stop at the table and also have a conversation with them. They also have, displays at libraries. She did a plant sale recently. I had mentioned the banner for the parade, the Memorial Day parade. And I mean, these are very elaborate exhibits, but they don't have to be. Even having just a hosted student there with our AFS table. I mean, we have lots of giveaways and stuff, but you can, also bring someone with you, like have a conversation, stop by. There might be like one giveaway or food or something that brings someone to the table. But then it's really about the conversations you have and the contacts that you collect. So make sure you're getting that email address, or you're providing that, QR code or sign up sheet. So you're collecting information. And it's nice to incorporate students like the one that's doing henna right now. I think that was a school event. But, they're excited to talk about their experience, and they're like the best advocate that AFS could ask for. And getting them involved in promotions is just always a good idea.
Diana also mentioned that flyers in the public pools, which I think is a great one, especially for summertime, because the pools are constantly being frequented by everybody. So yeah, that's a great place.
That's a great idea. At one point, we had a document that was open to all volunteers to add their ideas. It's on Help in Learning still in the Promote Hosting article. but it's also a great place to just brainstorm, go and see like what other people are doing, and you know, add to it if you have your own ideas. So these were ideas sent over from the Milwaukee team. Unfortunately, a lot of people were unavailable tonight, so we wanted to have some volunteers here speaking, but they were able to send over some ideas and photos and things. So from Milwaukee, I believe it was Steve Carpenter, sent over these ideas from his team. They've done cultural chat events in the high school where they ask current students to share 5 minutes about their culture, and they rotate. They do an annual variety show that features students from their high school, and AFS kids is like, they do like a skit, which sounds really fun. I also wanted to note the lawn signs. We have lawn sign designs available and can work with you to create new designs if you don't like what you see already available. And then we can help you if you're not sure how to submit the order or where. Something like lawn signs are just much more affordable to print locally than they are to mass produce, or like you can go to Home Depot and like get the sticks and then just print at a local FedEx or something. But we can also help with that. And hopefully, you know, your team has some SP funds to utilize, because that's, you know, we have designs with SP logos. So if you use that design, you could potentially use SP funds if approved. Next slide. So again, you know, we have mentioned this time and again, but incorporating host families and students, maybe providing, you know, students are usually excited about participating, but you might have to provide some incentive, like, okay, we'll get everyone pizza or something. We do have digital resources for students and host families to get involved in recruiting new host families. We have an end of year presentation that Nina created for students. We also have a general presentation for host families. Maybe the family is a part of an organization or a group and they get some time to present. Or, you know, I think recently there was someone who was, you know, pretty far up in the chain at her bank, at her organization, and was able to distribute an ad through like their staff newsletter. Like even things like that, people might not immediately think, you know, to do that, but she was very on top of it and really wanting to help recruit host families. So even things like that, even if it's not, you know, asking your network or asking your network's network to host, maybe it could be, hey, where do you work? Do they have a newsletter? Could you post this? Like, we just want you to share the information, get the word out. And telling their story. That's probably, it's the most, you know, convincing marketing asset that we have, is the stories of our host families and students and volunteers, as you all know. So making sure to capture those stories, engaging host families and students and sharing them. We're happy to take, we are always looking for stories, especially from a diverse group of host families, because we want to showcase them. We want to show people what the AFS experience is. We just shared something on social today, if you haven't seen it, which is an awesome story. I believe she is a returnee, but it's just an incredible story that we'd love for you to reshare. And yeah, and just kind of tips and tricks on where they can ask people to host. So in emails and newsletters, social media, through text messaging, thinking outside of the box, which is where, like, we'd love to hear your thoughts if you drop them in the chat, if you have other ideas as well. Next slide. So again, I pretty much already said this, but definitely on their social media profiles, reshare the event invitations. So not just, can you attend this event, but can you share them with your networks? Can you make sure your hosted student attends? Include exchange students to returnees in events through storytelling, food, cultural immersion. Yep, I think we covered all that. Next slide. So poll 3. So this is where we want to know, like, how can we support you? How can we help you when it comes to organizing these local events? I'm going to launch this. So these are just a few of the things. If you choose other, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. But do you want or need more print materials and giveaways? And if so, what are those? What kinds of print materials would benefit you? Is it, our hosting brochure, or is it, something different? Digital materials like social media templates, things that you can share with hosted students and parents. Funding or sponsorship. Do you have an issue? Like, you'd love to run these events, but you just don't have the funds to do so. Promotion of the event itself. It's really hard to get the word out. And best practices, instructions, or checklist. And this is, I believe I asked for the most, like the thing that you need the most support in. So it's not a multiple choice now, but I think it'll kind of give us an idea of where to focus. Looks like 5 out of 5. Or 6 out of 8. Okay, we got 75%. So I'm sharing results. So it looks like across the board, but best practices, instructions, checklist. That's really good to know, because we could provide some of those things. It would help with delegation, definitely helps with organization and timeline. I think one of the hardest things to know is like, okay, how much time am I going to need to do this? Once you settle on like an event that you want to do. Okay, great. I think we can take that into consideration as we move forward. And if there's other things that come up, we do have a request form for marketing related projects, designs, really anything you need. We're here to help you. And definitely join our marketing volunteers group on Workplace. This is something that we newly created so that we can talk directly to you, and volunteers can talk to each other within the group. So feel free to post there. We have to review the post, but we're happy to post if you have best practices to share. Maybe someone on this call or that watches this recording has a checklist for events that they could post already prior to us creating one. And next slide, I think, is questions. So I want to open the floor. Can we have pencils again? We often have students present at schools. Yes, so we debated recreating the pencils or the cups, and we went with cups for now, but we do have pencils on the docket for new giveaways because we were thinking of, what we could pass out to kids. Someone had asked about that as well. Any other questions?
We also, Susan asked where the QR code usually leads. So the hosting webpage is the most common one, afsusa.org/host. The top of that webpage has the like search for students tools. Is it officially called the Meet the Students tool still, I think?
Yeah, Meet the Students.
Okay,
and
yeah.
We're adding some functionality to that, so we will be able to direct to like specific students. But I would say like best practice and we use a consultant as well for some of this advertising, and most advertisers recommend going to our primary hosting webpage for people that are looking for more information or to learn more, because on that webpage we built it so the call to action is very clear. Fill out a host form to learn more, but they can easily navigate back to find more information if they need to. And it's kind of like a journey for new visitors. But if you've already captured that interest of that person, they're like, sign me up. You can lead to the become a host form. Or if you can have another option, start an application, get them right into, starting that app. So we have all of their information, and it's just a longer form, so it's a bigger ask.
Is there an easy link for that form, Julie, or should they just ask us if they need it?
Yeah, the become a host form is just the afsusa.org/host and then /become a host. I can drop it in the chat if you want. But it's also, if you go to our hosting page, it's like the primary button. If you want the app, it's the create account, or it's also at the bottom of the host page. But if you need help creating a QR code for it, we can definitely provide that. We also have a QR code already in the QR code article on Help and Learning for the hosting page. But what you can do with QR codes, which might be nice if you're doing it for a specific event or a specific like platform, we can add a UTM or like a campaign URL where we can see, on our site or like on our Google Analytics, like who's using that link or like how much activity we're getting from that link. And then we can also see if we create it, and even if you create it, you can see how many scans that QR code gets. So it's really good for tracking. QR codes is great for marketing professionals because we can see much more information.
We have another question, or no, not question, sorry, comment from Dana. It's helpful to promote the hosting experience as an educational learning opportunity for the whole family. Families are often looking for ways to invest in their children to help them have a head start for their future. I think that's a great point. And that's, I think, a great talking point, which I believe on the hosting talking point article that we have on Help and Learning, that's actually one of a couple of them, that's like the theme. So if you have someone at an event and they're like, oh, that like I have kids, they're this age, you could say, well, are your kids, do you want them to potentially, learn more about other cultures? Are they learning a language? And maybe they want to, meet a French high school student who they could practice their French with. Like there's so many ways to market the AFS experience to families, and especially those with children, like just like enhancing their intercultural experience, especially at a young age, is a great talking point for events. So I think that's really important to include. And then Jody mentioned that branded shirts, baseball hats, and sweats are good. Yeah, those pictures of the students in the beanies with the AFS logo, we now use. If you haven't seen it yet, I would be shocked because we use it all the time, because it's number one, an adorable picture, but it's also just like the branded component of it and just how happy they look. Like it's great to have the exchange students wearing AFS items, and it's nice to have items they actually want to wear. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think Jody sent us that picture because Jody sends us a ton of great pictures. Thank
Yeah,
you,
I think
Jody.
she did, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to add the pencils and those items to our like giveaways wish list. I think we might for shirts and things that cost a bit more, we might create them as merchandise, but it's just dependent on budget, of course. But we're also happy to provide any design for things that are ordered locally or created at like a smaller scale. If you need our logo, or if you're using SP funds, what we found is to utilize those without adding all of the SP logos on the item, including a card or some sort with the SP logos with the item, similar to what we did for the beanies. So the beanies came with like a nice postcard that had all of the SP logos on it and like a hosting recruitment language. This is very good information for us. Let me scroll down. Oh yeah, we can share the beanie photo for sure. Cool. Any other questions or suggestions, brainstorming for events? Anything anyone's done?
Yeah,
well, we'd
I
love
guess
to see more.
Yeah, the beanie photo, if you've been on social media, I should correct, then you've probably seen it. But I do think that we tend to use like those kinds of photos for our marketing materials as well. So the more photos of different exchange students and volunteers and families that we can get in AFS branded clothing, the more we can utilize. So those are always really great. So thanks to Jody for sending those awesome photos.
Yeah, send us your pictures.
Yeah,
We would love
please.
to share them. And marketing at afsusa.org again is our email address. If you want to send us, suggestions, again, giveaway suggestions are always welcome. Photos, help, like requests for help, you can fill out our form. We might direct you to the form for things like ads or print ad help. But yeah, we're here if you need us, when you need us, and we really appreciate you attending this webinar. It will be recorded, so we hope that you will share it with volunteers in your team. I know it's hard going into summer, everyone's very busy, hard to attend a webinar, but we really appreciate your time and your help in promoting AFS.
Oh, Jody just mentioned you can share my photos with other teams. I just updated photos tonight from orientation and host family dinner. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. It's awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah, thanks, Nancy. We'll see everyone later.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.